the opportunity. The consultants that we had work on our salary survey were from Employers Council. You can see their name in the bottom right, and they've prepared the PowerPoint presentation. We had a meeting with them last week to review the results, had a chance to ask questions. We made a few modifications to the findings, which I'll explain here briefly, but this is opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. So for starters, we did this analysis based on 68 positions within the district, and of course we looked at all of the different groups that we have certified, licensed. So of course our occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, psychs, social workers, all included in that grouping, administrative positions, classified positions, and we of course looked at coaching as well. And the goal was to identify maybe any areas of focus for future attention. So these are our results. There is a science to conducting salary surveys, and I'll talk about what the consultant was doing as this process progressed. So we initially agreed on 14 school districts to compare against. You see that the slide here says 13. We did end up taking out Englewood School District. They really skewed the numbers. Their bachelor's, for example, starts at $58,000, and it really just was an anomaly to have them in with us. And then also their cost of living is about 20% higher than our cost of living, so we did eliminate them. But this original list of 14 was agreed upon. The FMEA group and the ACP group all agreed that this would be the list, and we'll continue comparing against the districts that you'll see on the next slide. The survey also included information from the Colorado Department of Education and then Employers Council. They do surveys themselves in the private and public sectors, so looked at those as well. We matched primarily by title, and so the reason that's important, and in education, you know, a teacher is a teacher is a teacher, a paraprofessional is a paraprofessional is a paraprofessional. On occasion, that will get us not the exact match, and I'll talk about a couple positions wherein that was just hard to do. One, for example, is a print shop operator. That was nowhere to be found in either districts that we compared against, that's kind of our unique little deal, or out in the external market. We did use the data as of August 1st, so we're looking at 18-19 data. When these school districts start posting their new salary schedules, we'll have an opportunity to then look at what they did and then start the process over again. So a couple notes here. You know, because of the fact that we're comparing against school districts, it's very widely available. So we did look at websites. I reached out to contacts that I know personally in the HR departments with each of these districts when we had some questions that weren't able to be clarified by just looking on their websites, and they were good. All but a few were really good at getting us the data we needed. Where positions were unique to education, that's where the consultant exclusively used district data to compare against one another. If a position had both the district data and the external data, for example, an IT professional, he compared against both of those because, of course, we can find IT in the private sector. Same thing with custodians. You can find them in the private sector, etc. And where district data wasn't available, he would use the external data, and I'll go into that in some detail here. And then where we needed to slot a position, that's kind of unique to what salary people do, compensation specialists. They're taking a position that's of relative value, and if you have at least a 70 to 80% job match with the duties, then you can say, okay, I'm comfortable taking a position that I couldn't necessarily find within the districts, but I could find external and say, okay, that seems to work for what we would do in the district. Any questions at this point? Here are the 13 school districts that we compared against. Of course, we used all the local folks, Brush, Wiggins, and then we agreed to these other districts. If you are not familiar with their actual names, like Valley School District is Sterling, that's the second one down on the right. Weld County School District RE-8 is Fort Lupton. RE-1 is Kingsburg. Woodland Park is Woodland Park. I'm sorry, RE-1 is not Kingsburg. It's
Weld Central.
Weld Central, thank you. It's another K, right? No, that's Platte Valley. Anyway, I can never remember that one. Anyway, those are the 13. Don't ask questions about that. Okay, here is the employer council data. This is a really small slide, and we apologize for that. But this is an example of what their surveys look like. So they looked at the 2018 surveys for public employers, and for example, the 2018 Information Technology Survey to do our IT positions. And again, it's hard to see here, but he's looking at surveys that are vetted. The more jobs you have to compare against, obviously the more valid the data is, and so that's what he was looking for as he went through survey by survey, where you don't have a lot of good data. You want to be careful to say that's a number I'm going to be comfortable with, but that's an example of one of the surveys he used. And then he also used this Economic Research Institute to pull up our specific data. And this is by, and I should have said this last slide is all of Colorado, so it's compared to all of Colorado. There isn't a segregation of like Eastern Slope, Western Slope, or Northeast Colorado. This is all of Colorado that he was comparing against. And then this next one, you can specify adjustments for Fort Morgan, and it's for specifically elementary and secondary positions. So, for example, this one is a, it's on here somewhere, secretary? Does it say secretary? Okay. Yeah, oh, there it is, right in the middle, secretary of a school. So this is a good example of what he used. And he always used 25th to 75th percentile. That's kind of middle of the road, right? We could choose to use 10, very low, up to 90%, very high. I like this method personally because we want to be competitive. We're not necessarily out there to be the highest paying. We want to be competitive, nor do we want to be the lowest paying. So that's why he took that swath of data from 25th to 75th, and you'll see that throughout the survey results. So in general, he's saying you're looking for strength of the match, size of the survey pool, and the number of companies. And then generally he uses again that 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile. And then he used the all-incumbent median, which generally represents about 6 years of experience in the role. So these aren't necessarily compared to just entry level coming in with no experience. All right. So there's a few slides about data adjustments, and this is important to understand. He has to do apples to apples as much as he possibly can. So in all cases, he assumed steps were annual, and that's true. We sometimes call them years. If you give a step, you give a year. So he said those were annual. Our contract is based on 185 days, so where we didn't see a contract based on 185 days for certified staff or other staff who are on a certified schedule, we manipulated their data to be comparative to our data, and that's where I would actually reach out to the different school districts and verify how many hours do you work per day, what does your contract look like, because you could easily go, well, District A pays this amount, but works 1 week less, and you can see how that could skew the numbers. So on contract days, he made them apples to apples. He also did the same on education advancements. There's a slide in here where you'll see that some of these districts really spread their schedules out pretty far. We have 7 lanes, and that's what he compared to. So he did the little formula that you see there to make sure that it was apples to apples. And then finally, he carried out the data out to the schedule max for certified. So if their schedule had 12 lanes, okay, that's what he used. But for all other positions, he used 20 years. For example, our classified scale goes out to 35 steps. He stopped at 20. to make it even with other districts. Any questions on the data adjustments? Okay. So in general, and we'll go by each certified lane, bachelor's plus 15 here in a second, but he's indicating that entry starting pay is generally below average, and he is aware that we did that we're proposing a 2,000 increase, and he said that will be very positive, of course. And he did recommend to look at what the districts did this past cycle, again in the fall, to see where we landed, and we'll do that. And then when we met with him, he was aware of the longevity bonus. He hadn't done anything with that. Remember, he was looking backwards starting August 1st. So he was nice and kind enough to actually lay over, if we had this longevity bonus in play last year, what that would do to our numbers. And he didn't take the grandfathered approach. He just took our people with their latest dates of hire and laid out, okay, if they were at 3 years, that was added to their base. If they were at 7 years, that was added to their base, just that year increment. In the certified, 1,000, 1,500, etc., 3,000, and on up. So you'll see that it did, it will and did make a difference once we laid the longevity bonus out. Okay, here's the starting slide, and this will repeat itself 6 other times. And the average is the dark line that you see there, and that's among all the school districts. The I'll call it an orange line is our school district, and then the light line is our district with the longevity bonus. And for example, if you just look at the orange line on this one, remember I said earlier that he took the data out to the schedule max with each of these districts. So all of a sudden you'll see our line level out. That's because the other schedules go beyond ours, where we stop at EDS, 7 lanes. Some of them will go out much further. And I'm sorry, the career ladders slide was not included in the presentation, but some of the districts go out 11 lanes. So that's where you'll see ours level out and theirs will continue. So without the longevity bonus, it was looking like in most cases we're running parallel. In this particular case, in bachelor's, the adjusted entry, when he makes those data adjustments, the adjusted entry was actually very similar to all the other districts that we compared against, and that's where everyone starts, bachelor's. So this is a really good example. Then he goes over and does the adjusted average. He's taking in educational increments, contract days, apples to apples. He goes out 10 years, looks at their schedule max, and you can see where we start to creep below and they keep going above. But once you lay that longevity on top of it and you're taking the blue line, we actually peak up above those districts. If we had that longevity bonus in play last year, and if you decide to do that going forward, that's what it does to your salary. So it's actually a very good move. So I'm not going to repeat every slide individually because we'll just briefly go over them. But on this one, do you have any questions about how he's coming up with the numbers? All right. So bachelor's plus 15, and I'll just briefly talk about each of these. So bachelor's plus 15, again, starts pretty close on the adjusted entry to other districts. If we didn't have the longevity bonus, we would be under. But with that longevity bonus laid out on top, it does make a difference. And the same thing happens with BA 30. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Again, same thing happens with masters. And he wanted to note here that the benefit of the longevity bonus on average is minimal here, as many teachers in this lane are recent hires, but the effect of the maximum longevity bonus is evident. So this is one where, because people are placed right now in our schedule and how many years they have on this particular lane, it didn't make a huge amount of difference, but as you go out, it does still go out on top with that longevity bonus. Masters plus 15 and Masters plus 30. And then EDS was interesting. There's only 2 people on this. The longevity actually laid right over because they're too new. They didn't get a longevity bonus. So the orange is actually right on top of the light line there, and I don't know why it chose to pick the light line and didn't blend the colors, but yeah, they didn't qualify, those 2 people, so you can see it didn't make a difference. But and that's what it would primarily have looked like without the longevity bonus. It runs under in all cases, but with that longevity bonus, and keep in mind that's not everybody every year getting the better salary, right, because it's based on their longevity. But when he did lay those that got it on top of the salary, it made a huge difference, and that was neat to see. So that would be a great impact if that's what you decide to go with. Any questions on the certified before we move into the other licensed positions? All right. Okay, so this one unfortunately was difficult to assess because people include other licensed right in the certified schedules and they don't differentiate. So we use the second bullet where we have flexibility for hard to fill positions. We do a differentiation salary. So while we put the other certified staff on the normal schedule, we give them an extra lump sum of money to get them closer to maybe what private sector would be paying. And he's just saying here that you'll want to continue to do that where you do find rough patches where you can't hire people for specific needs. The differentiation salary is a really good way to do that. So unfortunately here we had a limited matches, but we do have a slide here of a few that we compared to external market data, and the only ones that had survey school data to look at was the school nurse. And you notice most of these are hourly. That's how it played out on the external market. Doesn't mean you couldn't change these to an annual amount, but there was no match for instructional coach and no match for coordinator for the gifted and talented program, and these external matches were found in all those different realms. So if you do compare what we did have with survey school data for a nurse, we actually do all right by nurses. You can see the median is even higher on the district side than it was on the external market. And that's assuming RN and all the things that we would be looking for, if that makes sense. I see a couple puzzled faces, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
I actually have a question. Do you know if they, because like our counselors and instructional coaches are actually paid as just certified staff, so they're not on a different schedule.
Yeah, and that's the
We don't know that answer.
yeah, and that's the whole problem because they are blended in with the teachers. It's hard to say, okay, how much are we paying just a we know what we're paying them, but we couldn't compare to any other school because they have them lumped together. They don't say nurse and here's the range, and school counselor and here's the range. So that one was a difficult one. But where we are seeing difficulty hiring, that's when we try to make it more robust with the differentiation salary, and he said just to continue that. So before we move on to classified, any questions? And if you think of something and you would like me to ask the consultant, he'll definitely make himself available, and he apologizes that he couldn't be here. So he only modeled 3 of our classified positions with the longevity bonus. I'll show those here shortly. Eventually we'll want to model all of them. And then his recommendation is to look at some of these positions here for further review. These were hard to place, and or they were way below market for what we're paying these positions. And then he actually took our schedule, and you know that our set amount is 20-cent step all throughout the schedule and classified. And this goes to where you're showing compression. So what he's showing us here is that if you are 35 steps away from the start of the schedule, and you're only doing 20-cent increments all throughout, obviously that number is going to go lower and lower and lower the further you get out. And that's really what's happening on our certified too. We're working on the base, which of course we need to do for recruitment, and I think that's the feeling that the board has had. But if you don't touch anything to the right, for example, maybe make a step out further to the right, a little more money, then you will have compression, and that's what's starting here. Is if we're just touching the base, you'll have a big percent. In our case, it's like 8.48% on our schedule, and all the way down to the bottom right of the certified, it's a 4%. And the classified positions are doing the same thing. So you can see they start pretty high if you give just that step, but then as it goes out, it deteriorates. So his comment here is the set amount of 20 cents per step has the effect of creating pay compression internally, and then that results in the pay schedule falling behind market the further you go out. And he said most organizations do have pay structures advanced on a percent of pay, not necessarily on a dollar amount. But that is something that he found. And but he said with the longevity bonus, that will actually help some of the flatness of the curve being offset. So that is a positive again on this side of the house too. And then he said the longevity bonus has an upward slope since the bonus increases over time, and that somewhat mitigates this flatness that you would see if you just stuck with the same dollar amount throughout. So he says, for example, $1,000 for someone making $25,000 is 4%. For someone making $50,000, it's 2%, much higher than what you would see normally if we just stuck with the schedule. So his thought was, good on you if you go with the longevity bonus, because that does help the current situation. So he showed 3 positions that one is good, one is middle of the road, one isn't so good. And same thing applies here. Longevity bonus laid on top, us being the orange line without the bonus being the light line, and then the dark line is where the data came in at. And for the most part, all of the classified positions, with the exception of a couple, warehouse, print shop operator, could easily be matched either with external data or internal data, or both, I should say, school data, or both. So here's the example of a kitchen manager. So without the longevity bonus, this is a good one. It actually shows that we're not doing so bad, that with the longevity bonus, it makes us actually right in line with what others are paying. Without it, we would have fallen way behind. The para is actually a good one here. Basically said that we're in line with what other districts are paying. You can see our minimum is $12, a maximum is $15.80. The average, we're right in line with that on the high side. The median side, we're a little higher. On the low side, we're higher, but with the bonus, it really makes an impact for those that get that on those incremental years. And then one that didn't do so good, even with the bonus, was this accounts payable clerk. It just isn't keeping up with what the market says it should. And this is one position among a few others that we might want to consider doing something about. But these are taken into consideration our 18 numbers, 18, 19 numbers, not 19, 20 going forward. So keeping that in mind too. So my thought was, we've got a good starting point here. We'll keep it going with seeing how these districts are doing and how we're doing, and then just keep it going and apprise you every so often as to how that's looking. So moving on to administrative, and we're about 4 slides from being done. There is a schedule called the non-certified director schedule, and it's actually titled the District Support Center schedule, and it has 3 positions on it, and they're just lanes. One is confidential staff at the District Support Center, so your admins, and then the next lane is IT, and then the next lane beyond that is a non-licensed director, food services director, facilities director, transportation director. This one fell way behind, not so much in the administrative, but definitely in the IT, and then the non-certified director. And this kind of goes in line with the suggestion on salary schedules later, would be to maybe negate what we're currently using and go to a min-max type of schedule. Administrative positions, and he did this by position. He listed both the difference versus survey and the median on those, and the difference versus the market. For superintendent, there was no schedule. The assistant superintendent shows at 91%. So you want anywhere 10% under, 10% over. So if this number had showed 100%, we would be right in line with what other assistant superintendents were making. This showed 90%, which is kind of the sweet spot. 10% below, 10% above is kind of where you want to be. There was no schedule for the school business officer or CFO. You can see HR there, information technology, definitely well under that 10 over, 10 under. Director of Food Services, from the median perspective, showed, and that's the internal school survey, showed that we were doing well, but the external, and that's a job that you would see externally as well. Hotels and the like may have directors of that nature, but those are all the administrative positions as he worked through those. And then finally, we get to coaching, and our stipend data for coaching and other positions is pretty complicated. We have 11 levels and like 5 steps, and within those 11 levels, there's different job titles. So if you're a head football coach, you're level 1. If you're head basketball coach, you're level 1. If you're an assistant football coach, you're level 3. Et cetera, the track and cross country are in level 2 range. He looked at this data and he just said all of the school districts are doing it differently. He said that it would be a good thing to look at that, and I think that I would agree with that. So come fall time, when things settle down a bit, to take that schedule and just look at and see where we're at. Now, there are no proposals this season to make any increases into the stipend schedule. Those were going to remain flat, and I think it was a good decision not to touch that, because he said in most cases our head coaches were right in line with other head coaches, and our assistant coaches were right in line. The assistant head coach middle school was slightly under that 10% above, 10% below, but all in all, he said coaching seems to be right in line, and our stipends therefore are right in line with what we're doing, or should be doing, I guess. So he would have done a much better job had he presented, but do you have any questions on any of the survey results?
No, and I think you actually did a great job, because when I looked at it on my own, I was a little like...
Oh, okay, well, good. That's
so,
good.
It was very helpful.
Okay. I'm glad it didn't go too bad. Any questions before I call it good?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I had one question, just
Yes.
this type of a review, this is just included in the membership we have with Employers Council?
No, it isn't actually. So it is above and beyond. So we had budgeted last year $20,000 for this particular survey to be conducted. The bills are still coming in, but we'll be under that 20,000. but no, it's not included on a regular basis. And we hadn't done one in the district for quite a long time. I don't even know when the last time was.
What great information, though, to have. That's
Yeah,
really
it's a
helpful.
good start, and we're building relationships with these other districts to just keep comparing, and then we can make some good decisions based on good data.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to reports, starting off with board reports. Are there any board reports? Okay, superintendent report. Dr. Hammack.
Yeah, Mike, how do I get this up onto the screen? Just, I'm not gonna go slide by slide, but just. Is that me? So the first thing I'll show you, or first thing I'll comment here, I spoke with Mrs. Amon about the early Head Start slots. There was some questions from Board of Education on those slots. I just wanted to make sure that I followed up on some email information with the board. There was a question about students projected as participants in the program. Again, she's seeing about 8 to 12 early Head Start children enrolled at any given time, ultimately determined by an application process. There was a question about additional staffing. I verified with her that we would not need any additional staffing as of today. There's an eligibility process for identification. She has a link noted to that. Liability question about insurance coverage required. Liability policy is just noted there as being maintained. Office of Head Start does not require does not set a required face value of the policy. Does it impact other programs? And she said, no, it's not drawing from any other programs. Based on that data, it's something I know when Mrs. Amon spoke with me today, she said, again, it's something that is not impactful of other programs within our district. It does not require us to take on additional costing in terms of employees. It could bring some additional funding into our program. So, again, I don't see any negatives with her pursuing that. Does that make sense to the board? Okay. The second item that I have on my report is just, and real quick, I'm not going to go through every slide. But I did provide the Board of Education with kind of a first look at at a PowerPoint based on the continuous improvement model that the district is addressing. Next year obviously will be our second year on this model. And then real quickly, I gave some. Here, let me go to a larger slide. Real quickly, some demographic information. Again, this is just student counts. That's not for reimbursement. That's not our total number of students, which, Rena, or Dr. Frasco, that hovers right around 3,500 kids.
Just
Is
last for, 3470.
3470. Again, you can see our minority student numbers right around 70%. I thought this was real interesting down here that our mobility rate actually dropped pretty significantly last year, which is real nice information for our school district. Free and reduced price meal eligibility stays, somewhere in that mid-60s number. Actually, that's dropped off a little bit again. English language learners has dropped down a little bit, around 34%. And then our IEP numbers have been stable under Lisa's leadership, around 11.5%. I did want to show you, again, this is the continuous improvement model that we advanced last year with our leadership team, with the instructional rounds. our evaluation plans as aligned with our problems of instructional practice, our fishbone analysis that Dr. Frasco led, and our review of data, unified improvement plans as aligned with all of this work, and then our intervention and support services. And we've really, and then of course, we had some other pieces I should say as well. Dr. Frasco led work with the Colorado learning standards through curriculum mapping. She led work with our instructional coaches and our Hattie mathematics curriculum for best practices of delivery instruction and assessment for mathematics. Also did a lot of work with Mrs. O'Connor as she came on midway through the year to be our director of English language learner services, and then also we've pushed out with some co-teaching services through Mrs. Meagle. So next year, I think it's really important, and we've talked a lot about this, that we have a coherence framework, a public education leadership project coherence framework through Harvard, whereby we try to align all of the work in our school district, and we really limit our goals that we try to address. And one way that we limit goals is we've really made a commitment to stay with a continuous model over a long period of time, so that we're not doing a flavor of the month approach to getting better. We're really trying to say, hey, this Hattie mathematics work is going to make a difference for us. For example, we need to do that over a multiple year period of time. Our curriculum is our learning standards. I know Dr. Frasco has just been expert at really pushing that message out over and over again. Every time we have a conversation, we remind ourselves that our standards drive our content and drive our skill base, our skills work for our teachers and working with kids. You can see we're going to do our fishbone and root cause analysis, fishbone diagrams again this year. We'll again look at problems of instructional practice. We'll go into year 2 with instructional rounds, and we have added, one thing we noticed was strength of our lesson planning, and so we're using this McTee and Wiggins backwards understanding by design, backwards design model, because one thing that Elizabeth City talks about in her work for instructional rounds is getting your task right, getting the academic rigor of your task right in order really to have high quality outcomes for kids. And then I think the board saw that we're pushing out on really trying to look at how we develop a culture for academic improvement across our district. We want to recognize, we want to go back as far as we can, and I know I've already put Bev on this homework, but we're trying to identify all of our salutatorians throughout the years, all of our valedictorians, all of our National Honor Society students, all of our kids who have scored really well on advanced placement exams. They're getting a 4 or 5 on an AP exam. All of our kids who have scored very, very well on ACT and or SAT, and put up academic plaques that recognize all of those students for the high achievement that they've had. And I'm saying just these areas as they're at the top of my head, but I know I'm missing key club students and any academic, high academic achievements in a CTE field, for example, in an agriculture field. We want to create a culture where academics is number one, where our kids that achieve at the highest levels really get recognized for that, and we want to have academic signing days just like we do for athletics for all of our kids. And then I wanted just to give you a flavor real quickly of how we're doing with this approach. And again, this is approach just across our district that's been led by our teachers, by our administrators, by our district level people. I know Michael Boyer has been taken part in many of our walkthroughs, so it's really been a whole team approach. But you can see they had 30 assessments for, I'll go real quickly. Here's Baker School. They had 30 assessments. These are Common Core, Colorado Common Core mathematics standards, so they're very rigorous. They had, if you just look at this mean score postings for all of these, you can see in 30 assessments, they had 28 improvements from winter to spring. And again, this was year number 1 that we have this information. So we'll build on this MAP NWA data. Every single year we'll have CMAS information that we'll look at in the summer, in the late summer when that comes in. And of course we'll have SAT information as well. And Lisa has information through their, I'm trying to think of the special education model that they use for their testing. I'm drawing a blank on it. What? It's DLM, yeah. Dynamic learning maps.
Yeah, just for reading and math.
Right, I couldn't think of the dynamic learning maps. Sorry. But here's Baker, real outstanding score. Here's Columbine on that mathematics assessment, 100% of their test. They show growth. Green Acres. Here is Pioneer at 83%. Sherman School, 100% improvements. Here's the high school on that profile there at 82%. Here's the Lincoln High School at 100% on 8 assessments. And here is, or that was the middle school, excuse me. Here's the high school at 73%. And then at another measure it's at 67, and another measure at 50. But that was, I think overall with math, those were all very strong scores for our school district. Our reading, and again I'll go real quickly, here's the Baker School at 76. Our reading scores were down a little bit. Columbine at 53%. Again, here's Green Acres, 100%. I think Green Acres was 100% on every single measure, which is, you start looking at the number of assessments they did, that's exceptional. 85%, well, excuse me, that score is supposed to be the Pioneer score. I forgot, I moved that on the presentation I'm doing at the City Council tomorrow night. I'll move this in this one. That's supposed to be your Pioneer score. Here's another 100% for Sherman. Here's a tougher reading score for Fort Morgan Middle School. I'm not quite sure why our scores were down there. Here's another 100% at the Lincoln School and a 78% at the high school. Here's our language growth. And I told you I wasn't going to go through every one of these, so I won't. That's a lot of data. But probably the toughest measure we had in here was science at our high school. I don't know if you saw that. I know we struggled there. I think partially that's a testament to some of our facility challenges, quite frankly. And I think partially it's a testament to that we've had a pretty significant change in personnel over the years in our high school science. What I want to do though is with that score information is reach out to Morgan College again and see if we can't get some additional assistance from the college on helping us. So real quickly, here's what we've shown is how we go about our leadership work. Again, we use a coherence framework. We look at our data that comes to us from state of Colorado. Here's our fishbone analysis that I think you folks have seen that we do before. Our problems of instructional practice, which then inform our instructional rounds work. Here's our instructional rounds calendar. I think you saw from me that On average, we were doing like 225 instructional rounds per building last year. 225. Here's an update of components. I've talked about this, quality of task. A second huge component that you're going to see us focus on next year, as we talked with our principals just last week about this, was quality of feedback. We used emails, and I should say we used a written form for most of our feedback, and we want to find a better way next year. This was across the board. Our administrator said we want to find a more direct method by which we can provide feedback to our teachers for this year, and really focus particular skills for improvements. And then here's just some examples from Hattie. We're going to be using our John Hattie as our advisement on that feedback. Again, here's some more examples of problems of instructional practice. Here's some more work that we did with PLC work. And then, how did I end this? Oh, I end this by showing some of the work that Dr. Frasco and the instructional coaches did on real high quality tasks and reporting. And here's our updates. Here's what I talked to you about in terms of our culture of learning. And then that is, you've seen this report as well as we move over to a blended personalized learning model with the one-to-ones. So a lot of stuff, but we're starting to see some good results already, and that's really what I wanted to convey to the Board of Education.
Well, good luck with your report, or with your presentation, and thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Moving on to Chief Financial Officer Mike Lee. Has already left us for the evening.
Right. He did not have anything else. That's right.
And Human Resources Director, Mr. Boyer, do you have anything else for us?
I do have a couple things. Dr. Frasco, did you have anything you wanted to from the Assistant Superintendent? Report?
Oh,
I apologize.
that's okay. I actually have one item up for action tonight. It'd be our consolidated application for federal programs. And it's quite lengthy, 50 pages, but overall, just to capture, we are going to be down in Title I by $28,000, and down in Title II just by a little haircut, about $400 short. And we're up in Title III, our ELL, and Title III, A, immigrant set aside. We are not getting very much funding at all, but we did get a tick up in Title IV. And so overall, we're asking for approval of approximately $700,000, most of which it goes to personnel. So if you have specific questions, I can take them now or at action time.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Boyer.
Thanks. I just wanted to update the board. I have attached to my report the open positions as of today, and there's roughly 25 that we're still looking for. We're about halfway there. With new positions, we were close to 50. It was like 48, 49. So we're getting there. You can see where we have recommends to hire pending on a few of those positions. Tonight here's an example. You have a Miss Lindsay Ford on your personnel action report. We offered the position, she accepted the position, and then no sooner, like a week later, she called back and said, "Oh, actually, I got a better position, so I won't be coming to your district." And that's happened now 5 times in different positions. We think we've nailed a candidate, and then before we can get them a contract, they've accepted something else.
What's a better position? What are they?
That's a really good question. I'm going to follow up with each of them that we've offered and ask what changed their mind. Yeah, but I don't know, Connie, at this point. My hunch is closer to home and then possibly more dollars.
Sure.
But that would be my hunch. But we did just get in line with Greenheart Exchange. They're a program similar to Colorado Learning, who we used last year, that brought in our 2 international candidates from the Philippines. This particular company we are now receiving applications from, and they have candidates from Spain, from the Philippines, from India, the UK, Colombia, Argentina, and they are helping us place some of these positions. So we hope to have some good success there. And today we just hired our first international candidate. It's an international candidate from the Philippines for our SPED position at the high school. So I think that's where we're headed next, and we're still not too worried. We still have a good little bit before school starts.
We've got some positions as well, Mr. Boyer, that we're getting assistance from Morgan Community College.
Great.
Are you noting those on here?
I am not. Yeah, the one is a science position, correct?
And there's a college algebra position where there's two classes that they're going to be teaching for us.
Perfect. Yeah, I didn't note that on this report.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
And also I'm continuing in talks with Dr. Freed and Kathy Frisbee about establishment of a grow your own teacher program for our school district. So I think we're going to have something by the fall. So we're working real hard on that.
It would definitely be exciting if that could come to fruition.
And then, Derek, I do have a couple items in the action items, salary schedules, and MOUs, and I'm happy to talk at that point if you have any questions.
All right, well, thank you. And moving on to English Language Development Director, and I don't believe she's with us this evening, so moving on to Special Services Director.
I did, hopefully you got these with the report. Just wanted real quick to give you kind of an update. One of the things we have to do in special education, because we get federal funding, is we have to track a lot of different things. So wanted to let you know our maintenance of effort, which is our ability to demonstrate that the monies that we use are being used appropriately for the achievement of special education students. Doesn't just include our district, but also like the parochial schools. We have to provide some services to them as well. So we have met all of that, and the state has recognized that. So that's always a positive. And then the forms that I gave to you is about significant disproportionality. And if you look down, it talks about identification and placement. What we like to see is the no in that column, that we're not disproportionate for the disabilities nor for the placement. Inside the regular class, less than 40% of the time. So those students that are pulled out a significant amount of time, that's a really important thing that I really try to keep an eye on. We try to keep those kids pushed in the classrooms as much as possible. So we did well this year. And then if you look to the right, in that top, in the where it says risk ratio for 18-19, it basically gives us the last 3 years. And the way the state of Colorado looks at us is we have to demonstrate that we've been maintaining that for the last 3 years. If we struggle in the area of disproportionality, it mentions in the top that we have to set aside 15% of the IDA funds to go towards what they call comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. In other words, that kind of comes out of all the things that we're already doing. We'd have to set 15% aside. So this is good news for us, and I just wanted to share that with you. So we have things going in the right direction. And then as well as Dr. Hemick was talking about the percentages of students for our district that are receiving special education services, we really try to keep that the 12% or below. That's kind of the state measure. So that's something we're constantly working on to try to make sure that we're keeping, not over-identifying students.
Looks good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
So moving on to discussion items, we have a policy for second reading. Actually, several policies for second reading.
I attached yesterday just an organizational chart to help you see these more easily, because I know I know Bev had gone through and taken out a lot of the associated documents, which made it more readable. But again, a lot of these policies, this time around, I think you saw regarded students that are in foster care, and making sure that your district would not be placing any barriers in their way to get an appropriate education. And so I think you saw, real quickly, if you started to look at policy JFE all the way down through essentially policy J, all the J policies, JQ, all regarded students that were in out-of-home placements. And there was a legal change on that policy. It was the CRS 2232-138H. They had done a slight change to that, again, saying that the state law has expanded protections for those students in comparison to federal law. So again, that was the big change in almost the majority of those policies. There was also, I know there was the Fort Morgan Education Association, their leadership reached out to me on the public concerns and complaints policy, which is KE, regarding how how the process works for resolution of a academic and or a disciplinary concern. And I know their concern was that those complaints are addressed initially at the most direct level. I believe we do that. That's certainly our expectation. I like the way this policy is written. Excuse me, I have KE for both those. The second one should be KER. I forgot to put the R there. I apologize for that. But, typically with policy, you want those policies to be expansive, and I said there, revised policy has greater breadth and language. That's what you want when you have these policies. You want them to be as large as you can be in terms of everything under the sun, because you'll never think of every issue under the sun that could present itself. But I do like, and then all they've done on that policy is move a very formal step process to KER, and I think they've done it very, very well. I looked at it again. I think it's very protective of parents and students and staff members. And I have, by the way, I have reached out to the leadership of FMEA and scheduled, and I should say I am scheduling. I've got to get back on an email because they reached out to me with a couple of dates on an email. I'm going to be scheduling a follow-up meeting with them just to walk them through those, both the policy and then the regulatory steps.
And that'll be before next meeting?
That'll be before the next meeting, and they've said that is fine.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And then our other discussion item is, of course, salary schedules, which I think we've all had a chance to review those. And do we have any more comments or concerns?
Anyone have any questions about the summary? Okay.
Okay. So moving on to the consent agenda, we have the personnel action report and the list of checks.
You also saw, oh, excuse me.
There's no list.
No,
Oh, and there is no list of checks, so it's
Yeah.
there's just the personnel action report on the consent agenda.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Terry Lapp, aye. Trish McLean,
Aye.
Lauren Sharp,
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to action items. Action item A, several policy revisions ranging from ECH 040819 down to KER. What's the pleasure of the board on those?
This is a second reading. We have one more reading.
I move we approve the second reading.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the second reading of those policies. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Derek Gerken.
Aye.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Warren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Action item B, consideration to approve federal programs consolidated application for fiscal year 2019 to 2020.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Derek Gerken.
Aye.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Warren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to action item C, consideration to approve 2019 to 2020 salary schedules. Yeah.
Move we approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the salary schedules. Is there any discussion on those? Okay, roll call.
Derek Gerken.
Aye.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Warren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to action item B, consideration to approve 2019 to 2020 MOU agreements with the ACP, FMEA, and the MSAP.
Do you want me to list those? To show those to you, or
I think everybody's.
Yeah.
have you seen them?
Been through
Okay,
'em.
all right.
Is there any
For
more
the audience.
Any more question on those MOUs? Okay. Did we
I'll
have
move
a-
we approve.
Do we have a motion?
I just made one now.
Sorry,
I move
thank
we
you, Lauren.
approve.
I'll second.
Do we have a motion and a second? Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Derek Gerken.
Aye.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Warren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And our final action item is consideration to approve handbooks for several schools.
Move to approve. A second.
Motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Derek Gerken.
Aye.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Warren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And brings us to our advanced planning. Next work session is June 10th at 5:30.
Derek, our board, right now, I don't have anything scheduled for the next work session.
Okay.
And I was not aware, did the board want to review where we are with projects or process, or does the board, is it the pleasure of the board just to not meet for that day?
I will be out of town from now until July
I know the summer
8th,
just
so-
gets really hard.
Yeah, I say not me.
No, I don't
Okay.
want that.
I can go over all of our leadership.
Busy as it
If you
is,
don't
it's
want to, I
probably-
guess I'm kidding.
I could go through every slide with you and do a,
Melissa will be
we
the
can do a
only one.
regression analysis of every slide. Okay.
No, it sounds like.
That's a pass.
Sounds like the consensus is to just forego the meeting.
The summer just gets really tough.
Yeah.
It just gets tough.
Yes, it does. So then we have a special meeting on June 28th at 7:30 a.m.
And I just want you to know, Derek, I will not be here
on June 28th.
on the 28th
Okay.
either. I won't be back
So
until
it's
July.
pretty important, if you're not going to be here, just let me know, since, just to make sure we have a quorum.
I will be here.
Okay.
Be back.
And then our next regular meeting is July 15th at 7. And that brings us to our second executive session. Personnel matters, except if an employee who is the subject of the executive session requests an open meeting. If the personnel matters involve more than one employee, all the employees must request an open meeting. Discussion of personnel policies that do not require discussion of matters specific to a particular employer are not considered personal matters according to CRS 24-6-402, subsection 4, subsection F. What's the pleasure of the board?
So move.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Derek Gerken.
Aye.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll adjourn regular meeting and adjourn in executive session.
Just